everybody. Welcome to Chats with Nadia. I am Nadia. I'm a life reinvention coach and a host. And today I have the honor and the pleasure to interview Miss Franziska Huishkel. Franzi is actually a freelance consultant for human-centric design in spaces. She co-founded Space and Pepper, which is a creative studio applying UX design principles to community and hybrid spaces. Franzi is also co-founder of the Space Lab Collective to research and design better living and working spaces, and she has previously worked in marketing with Coca-Cola and Lufthansa. So Franzi, welcome, and it's so nice to have you. Oh, fantastic. How are you doing today?
Thanks for having me. Happy to be on here. Nice Berlin, Mexico connection we got going on.
Yes, I love it. Thanks to technology, huh? 7 hours away and we still do it. I love it. It's amazing how technology has changed everything that we do and how we interact so far.
That's true. And it also, especially during this year, just creates opportunities for a different type of connection that is not just emails or a quick message. At least I get to see you, you get to see me. We have a much more personal experience.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And it's so nice. It's so nice to, even though we're so far away and even though we have a particular situation going in the world right now, we're still able to communicate. So,
yes.
Franzi, I would love for our audience to know a little bit more about your business. Well, particularly Space and Pepper. Would you like to elaborate a little bit on that one?
Sure. So I co-founded the creative studio Space and Pepper with my co-founder Hannah. And ever since we started this venture, we say we're on a mission to humanize spaces. And that sounds like a very abstract concept, right? So what that means is that we believe that we need to create environments, whether it's your coffee shop, your office, the hotel, or sorts of third spaces around us, that we need to create them around human needs. So usually, you know, if you, Nadia, for example, you want to build your own office, once you grow a huge venture, a huge, a huge successful company, you know, maybe you hire an architect, you get interior designers on board, and there's a certain process that usually spaces go through, from investment, conceptualization, all the way to the finishing touches. And we believe that when you design spaces for the next generation, for the people who use them, we need to understand how people go through their day, how they work, how they live, what type of needs they have. And this approach is called human-centered design. And so what we do is we apply certain processes and principles in the design of spaces in order to make them really fitting for us. Like really, if it would be your studio that you go in there and you're like, oh, I love that. Like it feels like I can have my calls over here in this area. I can have my clients meeting. This is my yoga place. I don't know what else you love doing. And we believe eventually this will lead to a more sustainable and more human type of environment.
Absolutely. I love it. It seems to me like you guys are focused on functionality. And it seems to me like it's very personalized, you know, which is amazing. Because of course, me, I'm a coach, and there may be other coaches like myself, but we all have different personalities. So the way you're going to create my office, if I were to go to your services, would be very different than somebody else. You know, maybe I like you said, I like to have my calls over here, and I like to do maybe yoga, and maybe I like to at some point meditate, and I need a couch. And maybe another coach that is maybe like, I don't know, a marketing coach or some other kind of coach is like, well, I don't need this yoga thing, but I would need maybe this monitor or something, you know. So everything, I guess, is depending on the person, right, and what they want to do in their space. So I think
exactly. And I think there's even, you know, an additional level. Of course, functionality comes at the core of a lot of decisions. But apart from functionality, you also have human emotions, like how do you want to feel in a certain environment? there's a lot of factors that influence how we feel and how we
Absolutely.
interact with other people. And if we keep the Nadia coach office example, that's one thing, right? But now imagining that maybe you would have a shared space with other coaches, or that maybe you would create a school for aspiring entrepreneurs. So the moment more and more different people are using the same space, it is so important to understand how these people go through their day, what they're missing. Maybe if you would just talk with a few of your fellow collaborators, you understand, oh, actually their biggest pain point is that, I don't know, they don't have a quiet place to take a call. Or maybe they want, if they take lunch, they want to be away from all of the work stuff and they want to look into the green. So the more people use one space, the more difficult it gets, but also the more important it is to really understand who you're designing a space for. And that has been driving us for the past couple of years. And it feels very purposeful. It really feels like a nice mission to be on.
Absolutely. I love that because honestly, if you think about it, more and more people are starting to move to their computers and their laptops and go into different spaces of co-working, and I personally, for example, I can tell you that I don't like the feeling of cold spaces, dark colors and textures, like only cement. They look very minimalistic to me. And I mean, they look cool. They're cool looking structures. They remind me kind of like maybe New York or something. But I don't like that building feeling. I would rather something a lot more cozy. To give you an
Mhm.
example, I would rather like leather on the couch or something, or like cozy colors, like, warm colors and things like that. And I think it's amazing the mission that you guys are onto, because once again, to each their own, right? And it's different to be creating for architects that you're going to be creating for coaches, or for one person that maybe, I don't know, a sports person or something, a TV broadcaster. Everything is going to be different. So I think it's a great mission that you guys are up to. I think it's an amazing product that you have to offer. I mean, an amazing service that you have to offer. So I think the world needs to know more about you, because I don't think there's many of you
Oh,
guys
sure,
out
sure,
there.
please. And actually a very interesting thing, I'm sure also some of your viewers, when you design a new product, right? You always try to understand who's using your product. And you try, maybe you have the opportunity to talk to some of your target group to really understand, okay, what are their needs? What are they missing in life? And we apply this process, the design thinking process, or human-centric, user-centric design to spaces. And that is so extremely interesting because, as you said, sometimes you walk into a space and you just have a feeling. You have a feeling, it's a little cold, or you don't feel welcome there. But there's also spaces that where you sit down and maybe it's a nice co-working space and they feel more homely, they feel warm. But it's extremely interesting to break it down. What makes a space feel warm, right? Like you just mentioned, maybe it's the texture, you have a little bit of color, you have some paintings, but it can also be how you're greeted, the people at the
Absolutely.
reception. It can be the brand, it can be somebody who comes to you and is like, hey, we just having a nice coffee break. Do you want to join us? We have a new barista. She's making this fantastic coffee from coffee beans from Chiapas, Mexico. So there are a lot of opportunities to create a holistic experience. And that is so really multi-dimensional that it's important to keep the focus, but it's also beautiful because there's so many opportunities to making experience special. And I
Absolutely.
think that is something that, whether it's virtual or offline, that is so important when thinking about user experience.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. And really, I think it's such an important topic that you mentioned earlier, emotions. The emotions, because it's what keeps us, well, either enjoying life and happy, or miserable and sad, So it's so important, the environment that we put ourselves in. So I think this is just amazing, Francie, what you were saying about the different dimensions that you can have a person feel a certain way, and how the environment affects the reaction or the emotion of that person, and how that is going to affect eventually their work. you know, because in the end, if you feel good in the space that you're at, you may be not only more productive, but also enjoy. Even if you're doing something you don't like, imagine somebody that has to spend 8 hours looking at a screen. Well,
Yeah,
that can be, well, not so great for some people, but if you're in the right space and you like the environment and people are kind around you and you like the colors and you have like a very comfortable couch to say something, I mean, you're gonna look at the screen and be like, okay, this is my job, but it's not so bad, you know, because this
yeah,
environment is so cool. It's like I love it. I love being here. I love doing what I'm doing, even though I don't enjoy looking at the screen particularly for 8 hours. But then again, I think that also could be something that you can maybe tweak, right, to make it more enjoyable.
exactly. Pain points can also be an opportunity. You know, if you understand that people are missing something, there's an opportunity. And when talking about experiences, also for as a coach or for coachees, there's so many ways, even in a virtual world, to customize it. Like, for example, there's a user experience when you invited me to be on this call. You know, you gave me a very good briefing. You know, we had a little chat before. Like, there's also a way to make experiences or to design experiences, even if they're more on a micro level. You know, even if it's not an office or a coffee shop, but if it's an interaction. And that there's really a world of opportunities out there. And especially for us right now, with everything you mentioned, people working more from home, you know, you see more and more these background Zoom screens.
Yeah.
I also today read, like, of course, there's now a word, I think it's called like Zoom exhaustion or Zoom exhaustion, like really this tiredness, all of the catchphrases we've heard 1,000 times. Can you hear me? Am I on mute? But even out of that come opportunities. How will the future office look like? Maybe we only come back 2 days a week, you know, maybe not every day 9 to 5. Maybe we have certain tasks we do at home, but certain tasks that we prefer doing in person. So there's a lot of dynamic in the sector, and we're really excited, and hopefully we can shape the future of this.
I love that, Francie. What an ambitious project, and I love to hear about it. I love to know about it, and I think the world needs to hear about it more. Yes. So, Francie, moving on to a different part, I would like to ask you, who was Francisca before Space and Pepper? Like, how was your life, and how did you move from the corporate world into, okay, I'm gonna make my own business, I'm gonna create my own business, I'm gonna focus on these pain points that I've seen from a customer or from anybody? Like, I would love to know that.
That's it's interesting. It's a very profound question, and I would even extend it exactly like you said. The Francisca before Space and Pepper was also Francisca that was employed. So as you mentioned, I worked in corporate America in my cubicle, like the stereotypical vision that we have. And I feel there was a wave of change that happened, but I almost don't want to give a very qualitative answer, right? To be like, oh, it was good or it was bad. But what I think maybe a nice way or an interesting way of answering this question is really pinpointing some of the biggest changes that I have experienced or that I see now in retrospect towards this transition. And I think the first thing that comes to mind definitely is that there is not this sharp before and after. I feel going or deciding to take an entrepreneurial path is such a process. And I feel you hear and see that a lot of times. I remember even getting annoyed when people told me, oh, it's a journey, it's a path. But it really is. It is like this big tube that you get sucked through, or you pull yourself through, like slowly. And sometimes you have areas where you move straight and you feel empowered, and then there's like narrow spaces where you kind of like pull yourself through and you don't see the end of the light. So I think it is such a transitional process. And I feel maybe comparing the two mindsets of myself, like 2 or 3 things I can think of. The number one certainly is before I definitely had this TGIF attitude, right? So I was like, thank God it's Friday. I'm gonna drop my pen, you know, I can see my friends. And I was much more, or I looked at work really a as something that ended when I left the office, because I was not as connected to my mission and purpose as I am right now. So that means on the flip side, the Franziska now is really feels this passion. I feel the passion. I feel very driven, and that doesn't mean that I enjoy all of the work that I do, right? Like, I don't think hardly anyone enjoys doing their taxes. You know, there's certain admin work where you're like, oh, but I never have this drag on a Sunday night where I'm like, ugh, like I have to work on Monday. You know, I prepare my week. I'm excited. I'm like, nice, I can work on this, I can work on that. So I think that is a beautiful flip side to it. But of course, that also means that sometimes you lay in bed and it's like 2 a.m. and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, like, how can I solve this problem? You know, so it's also much closer, all of these questions, the challenges you have, you feel them much more intensely. Like, I cannot really disconnect so easily as I did before.
I
And
understand.
yeah.
Because now it's like it's your baby, right? So it's not like you just drop your pen and that's it. It's like, yeah, drop your pen, but your pen is still in your brain. It's like, okay, so this went, okay, this went on, and I like this one, but maybe this thing I can tweak it or make it better somehow. And it's
Yeah.
just never ending. But now it's your own business and you enjoy doing it. So I guess it has both pros and cons, would you say?
Absolutely. And, you know, just this example that you just mentioned, before, when I worked in a corporation, let's say you have a problem or an issue, you have a very clear process. Either you ask your super, or you write an email to this person, or you know, you use a certain document you've used before. Now I have what feels like an infinite amount of opportunities to deal with. There's people I can talk to, there's decisions I can make. I can delay, I can act, I can, you know, I can ask someone. So it feels sometimes overwhelming, but it also feels so much more empowering. And I feel that what you mentioned, this kind of pro and con, is is actually much more, because you learn that so many parts of yourself are also so much more deeper. Like, I understood myself in such a different way working as an entrepreneur than being employed. Like, I got to know almost myself as a different person, where I had to experience my strengths much more intensely, just as much as my weaknesses, you know. And also understanding how to deal in beautiful, empowering scenarios, but also with more challenging and with failure and with disappointment. But the beauty thing is, what is kind of like, if you do the plus and the cons, the pros and cons, but what is below, that is something extremely positive, and that is this feeling that I stand much more in my truth. I'm much more connected to who I am, and by understanding about myself, the good and the bad, I feel empowered to be able to grow much more. And I didn't have that before. I wasn't so clear about my shortcoming and my strength. So there was also not really the spaces to improve it. You know, it was more like reacting, and sometimes you react like very disappointed or very mad, but you don't really understand why, like what triggered you. And this entrepreneurial journey has shed so much more light on that.
Oh my goodness, I can only imagine. Because when you are employed, like you don't have to worry about making decisions and you don't have to worry about the outcomes of those decisions. You just go with
Yeah.
whatever your supervisor tells you, right? Or whoever the email that you sent to told you. It's like, okay, if they told me to do this, I'll just do this and implement. And if it comes right, that's amazing. But if it doesn't come right, kind of like you wash your hands up and it's like, well, it was not my decision. I was just doing what I was told, you know? So very interesting, the mindset shift from being employed to now being an entrepreneur, and knowing that now everything, absolutely everything in your business, well, you and your partner Hannah, right? Like
Yeah.
whatever decision you guys are making, it's gonna affect your business for the better or for the not so better. Which in the end, I think the not so better is also brilliant, and it's also
Yeah.
beautiful because it allows you to learn so much and keep growing, right? But
I couldn't agree more. And I think that what you just said is also another one that I feel people are like, when they read it, they're like, oh, come on, duh. But it's so true. And I honestly, I wish I would have really understood that earlier. And not just understand, because there's this rational part where you're like, oh, great, I can learn from failure. But I think what, at least for myself or for also for Space and Pepper, what we try to do is, if we have a bad experience, we really try to move into this like observe it, like almost like a non-emotional mode, where you're like, okay, what actually happened, what was out of our control, but also what maybe really, what type of principles we could introduce to avoid being in the same situation. So what we learn from dealing with negative emotions is incredible. And also what we learn from putting principles and systems into place in order to not go through the same thing. Doesn't mean you're protected from failure, of course, but it means maybe you're shifting a different gear, or maybe you're trying something else.
yes, and it's advancing. I really think failure is just, it's just like a breadcrumb from the universe or whoever you believe in, telling you, okay, you're on the right path. You failed, that means that you get to learn something new that you get to implement in this path that you want to follow. So I think that's super cool, and I think that's just great. So tell me, when you're making a decision, what keeps you away from sabotaging yourself, second guessing yourself? You know, when, especially when you know there's something that, you know, the decision that you're going to make is kind of like critical for a particular situation or for a client or even for yourself and for your business. You know, how do you keep that negative emotion that we were just talking about? How do you keep that negative emotion from hindering your decision and not second guessing yourself based on that?
It's such a it's such a big topic. I would say, first and foremost, it constantly happens, right? So I have yet to talk to an entrepreneur who's like, you know what, I never experienced that. You know, like kind of this, like, don't know what to tell you, never have this. So there's, and I think it's also important for people to know that really everyone is in the same boat. I just, and I wish I could recall which podcast it was, but I had this amazing moment. I think it was Tim Ferriss or something, and they talked about a like some books from Alexander the Great, like his diary, and without assessing any type of Alexander the Great's ventures, he like, and he owned like a vast majority of the land. And sometimes in his diary, apparently, I have not read it, he wrote something like, oh man, like kind of like, I have to get up in the morning, I have to face this type of senate, they're gonna smash me again. So everyone in mankind, whether it's in the past, in the present, in the future, will face these fears. And I think first and foremost, knowing that creates this really this sense of human connection, that we're like, we all face that, and it's okay, it really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
It's human. It's human. It's
it is
part of human
human.
nature. And
It
it's
is
what moves you
human.
forward. Yes.
And in terms of how to deal with it, the second step that I think for me is so essential, and maybe it may be different for everyone, is really this awareness. Actually knowing right now I'm having a thought that is self-sabotaging, or that comes out of a trigger, or that comes out of a fear or an insecurity. Because I believe we constantly have thoughts, and most of the time we're not even aware of it. Like sometimes it is underlying, you know, like I get an email, I have a certain reaction, and I'm not even aware, like, why do I react like that? So being able to have this awareness to see, oh, like that triggered me, that sparked insecurity, that sparked fear, is like super important first step. And what I try doing, and also, to be honest, sometimes it works better, sometimes it doesn't work as good, is really trying to journal on it, like meditate a little bit on it. like, you know, having this moment, okay, that was a very difficult meeting, or I felt very challenged. Can I just take 5 minutes and just quickly write down? And sometimes I do it on the go, you know, and I'm like, okay, what happened? Well, I feel this and that. And then I try to do, and this is also not my idea, but to ask why like 2 or 3 times. I don't know exactly where I have it from. Maybe you're the expert in that, but I try to force myself to dig a little bit deeper. Okay, why did I feel like that? Well, I felt insecure. But why do you feel insecure? Like, well, because I don't feel I'm an expert in this area. And why not? Because of XYZ. And then that understanding often makes me feel very empowered, because then it's almost like I look at myself, and I have a good friend who's a coach, and who always tells me, like, put on the science glasses, you know, like just kind of look at yourself as a scientist, not like emotional, like, oh my God, but really, okay, this happened. Why? All right, then what can you do about it? Or maybe is there something small that could help me in the next situation? So I think that is an easy enough routine I try to do in order to get to the why of things. I think the moment I'm able to do that better, I'm more aware, and then also I can react quicker. Maybe even I catch myself in the moment, you know, before I kind of go down a loophole and I'm like, hold on, like I'm about to, you know, have a certain reaction, but let me reframe it in my mind. Like, can I see it a different way? And that is usually what's helping me most.
That is fantastic, Francie. I really think that emotional intelligence is here what plays a massive role. You know, the fact that you were able to like stop and really understand what it is that is triggering certain feeling or certain emotion. Like, why am I feeling insecure? Maybe it's because I lack preparation, or why is this email or this meeting sparking fear in me? Because why?
Yeah.
When you ask yourself why and you get to the root of the problem, is I completely agree with you that is so empowering, because now you know what's triggering that negative emotion. Now you know that you have to work on something, but now that you identify it, you can actually put in the work to make it better. You know, if you're feeling like insecure about something, it's probably because you're not prepared about that particular topic. So then you can be practical and, you know, hands-on work. Now I know I have to be prepared on this topic, because otherwise I will feel insecure. So you just go and do it. And that's why it's so empowering. And I love that you're sharing this experience with us and with the audience, because it's massive, you know. And also it's great that you're so objective, you know, because it allows
I
you to look
try.
at things from
I
a lot.
try.
Oh my goodness. I think it's every human being goes through that, you know. And it's amazing to be objective, just as it's amazing to understand what we're feeling, because feelings and emotions are pretty much what lead our lives. But sometimes it's hard for us to grasp around that, you know, because we keep saying, okay, if you just shove the emotion to the side and you just keep going for what other people tell you that is the right thing to do, you'll just move on with it. But it's really about paying attention to your emotions. And for example, if you're feeling anger, first of allowing oneself to feel it, right? Because you cannot just like shove it to the side and pretend it's not there, because otherwise it's going to come out in some other form. You're going to explode one day, you know, one little thing is going to make you mad and you're just going to like shout at everyone around you. You don't even know why. And this is because you're shoving the emotions to the side. So it's very important to feel them. And I love the fact that you try to be aware of the emotion, try to put a name on it, and really understand, okay, why am I feeling this way? Okay, I feel maybe frightened, or I don't know, I feel insecure, I feel, I don't know, whatever it is, like sad or frustrated. Okay, why? And then you get to the root of that problem, and from there everything kind of like clears out. It's like
Yeah,
clarity. Yes.
definitely. And it's also a process and a muscle to train. And what helps, I think, at least in our specific case, it also helps so much if you have a co-founder or someone to like as a companion to go through that, and maybe also to get a different perspective. Because as you mentioned earlier, I mean, the word self-sabotage really comes from putting hurdles in our own way, like having a negative influence on ourselves. And of course, if we have the tools and the awareness to pull ourselves out of this, that's amazing. But it can also help. This is why it's beautiful to have coaches. I think it's so important. Like, I'm the biggest advocate for every entrepreneur to have a coach, or to also have a co-founder, to just get a different perspective, because sometimes you just can't do it, or it's so difficult to pin yourself down and be like, but why do you feel like that? And having someone who's a little more neutral, or if it's your co-founder, like just has a different perspective, it helps so much also to get a different point of view. Because oftentimes, if you're able to reframe a challenge, or be like, okay, well, if I felt like that because of an insecurity, in this particular meeting, the goal was not to be an expert, like, so if I reframe this just as a meeting to talk about a certain project, and not to appear as the most knowledgeable person in all of the different areas, which sometimes, unfortunately, I put myself the pressure to be that person, to be knowledgeable and like very aware of everything, and I'm simply not. But reframing also the purpose of why I am having conversation or a meeting also almost puts off that pressure, this insane amount of perfection I expect for myself. So it helps to share, it helps to have a coach.
Oh, that's fantastic. I agree with you. And that brings me to my next question. How did you manage to get a co-founder, and what made you thought of it? Were you thinking about this topic before? Were you thinking about, oh, maybe I should get a co-founder so we help each other mend like with the mindset and with a different perspective? Or was it by chance? Was it somebody that was from, maybe your friend throughout the years or something like this? Or what made you want to get a co-founder?
It's interesting, because I think in our case, it's not so much like I had an idea and I got a co-founder, but we created the project together. So what happened was that we met in kind of a business club in Berlin, because we saw that we have a shared passion around experiences, around hospitality, how to create spaces with a certain ambience. And out of that really started this process of building an agency together. And then we developed the product, then we developed our brand, the name, like the offers, all of that. So it was really kind of a seed that we planted together. And looking back, that I don't think the agency or Space and Pepper would exist without that. Simply because when you're two, and again, that's different for everyone, but for how I look at our venture, it's just so important to have this almost like this social contract, like we had this accountability. Like, we started meeting, then we started a Slack channel, we gave each other tasks, or we said, okay, until next time, I'm gonna work on this, I'm gonna work on that. And that is so powerful. Like, even if nobody, there's no real company structure yet, it's just ideating. But I noticed when I do things on myself, if there's projects that don't have a strict deadline, right? Like, you want to do self work, it's easy to let those ones slide and be like, well,
yes, you just let them slide, like you're saying, because you have nobody to keep you accountable for, like you were very, very well saying. You just like, okay, so today didn't happen, maybe tomorrow it will. Okay, I'll write it on my agenda or my calendar, and then tomorrow happens, it's like, oh, something came up, okay, tomorrow, like you just keep pushing it. And
you just copy paste it to the next day. Exactly. So this sense of accountability is so important, and I think it creates the right amount of, and pressure is not the right word, but really this drive to also get stuff done. And I think another beautiful thing is also to share beautiful moments, like your client deals, like the first really big deal, like the first really successful workshop, but also together share these moments of like, oh man, like we didn't get that deal, or we had a meeting that was much more challenging than we thought. So to have this companionship, that is also priceless. Like I think it makes such a difference. Of course, the more people you have, I don't know. I mean, it really depends on the dynamics. It can also make things trickier.
Yeah.
For us, it worked really beautifully.
That's amazing because I am assuming that you chose right, you know, when you choose right and you guys have the same mindset or the same goals and you kind of know you both have the same vision, then it's easy because sometimes when you choose the wrong partner, I think it's just like in life, you know, you choose the wrong partner and then you have a hard lesson to learn because then you realize you
Yeah.
guys don't match. But seems like even your co-founder Hannah definitely made a really good match in business because you're thriving, you know? And I think that's
Yes, and
amazing first off.
it's amazing. And we actually there's also a fun tool for any one of your viewers who may be in a similar scenario or is thinking about it. If you Google just like questions to ask your co-founder or a potential co-founder, you come across very interesting questions that I think it's worth to talk about it, because similar to if you were to have any type of contract, or if you get married, I mean, it's a
Right.
different things, but there are questions you should ask yourself, right? Like, what happens, you will never want to think about it, but in the worst case scenarios, like what happens, like how are your values, how do you work, is it super important for you to get up early in the morning, do you need to see each other all the time? So as in every relationship, as you just said, it is also important to talk about, well, what happens if we make 1 million? What happens if we lose it all? What happens if we need to hire 20 people? Do we want that? Don't we want that? So there's a line of really important questions to ask each other.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it almost sounds like you're choosing a partner, like a life partner, you know? Like
Yes,
I almost feel like a business partner and a life partner are kind of like the same, just in different scenarios, you know? But no,
especially when you're self-employed, probably yes, because you also spend so much time with the other person, like they become also a big part of your everyday life.
yeah. How fun, Franzi. Now you make
Oh,
me think of wanting a co-founder myself. It's like I should do it myself.
at least consider it, consider the ups and downs, and that's the beauty. There's so much material out there, there's so many podcasts, like you can really shorten your learning curve by getting a lot of input from different sources.
No, for sure. I will keep that advice. Thank you so much. And Francie, I would like to ask you, you touched on something like when you said, you know, closing a deal with clients. How was it when you have finally launched and went into market in regards to your mindset? Like, were you scared? Were you feeling like, oh my gosh, it's the first time we're selling this thing. Are we going to sell anything? Is this thing going to work? Like, how do you feel?
you know um I actually think for us, there, of course, there's the first of everything, but every little micro decision holds a lot. Like, even if you launch your website, that's one thing. Then if when you decide to communicate that you launched your website, like what type of language do you use, what type of visuals, then if you put the first time together your offer, how do you call your offer, how do you price it? So for me, that was not this one moment. There were like 50 moments, sprinkled around a timeline, that each and every single one held a lot of this like excitement and fear. Like I feel these two feelings can be very close together, where you're like, like what is the reaction gonna be like? Like, is it good? Of course, you also want approval, so you have a certain expectation. But I felt in terms of mindset for all of these different decisions, it was always this belief that no matter what happens, we can figure it out. So I never had this feeling, oh my God, what if this happens? I'm gonna bury myself in my bed. Like, there was always this notion of, okay, like kind of, sitting in front of the TV and you're watching a football game and you're kind of like, okay, like everything can happen, but you kind of know how to react, or at least what to do next. So I never felt powerless. I certainly felt nervous. I felt anxious. Sometimes I felt excited. I felt joyful, but there was more this kind of like, bunny battery mode, like just keeping on running, like being like, okay, like this works, this doesn't work. And I think the more often you go through this stage, also you feel differently. Like I feel, the 20th time you had your meeting, you have a different feeling. Like I think it's always good to keep a little bit of this excitement, and maybe a little bit of anxiety also helps to keep focused and to be like, okay, like this is not just like every other meeting, but there's definitely this muscle that you train to feel more confident and more comfortable.
Absolutely. I really believe it's all about self-confidence, really being able to feeling that you can deliver what you're offering, deliver your promise. So it comes with a lot of preparation, of course, and comes down with being aligned with who you are, with who you really are, which is something you mentioned in the beginning of the interview. Now you feel like you're more aligned with your purpose and your passion, and I think that's amazing, Francie. My goodness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Feels really good.
I bet. Yes, it's so nice once you finally align with what you're supposed to be doing in this world and not just go by chance, it's amazing when you find something that is not just providing you financially, but also providing you emotionally and to a higher level, your spirit, your soul. Like it just feels good. What you're doing just feels right. Feels like you're actually creating an impact, not only for yourself, but not only for a corporation, but for a larger group of people. So fantastic, Francie. Goodness, I really feel like we could be talking forever.
Yes.
Fun topic.
I'm like, how much time has passed? Can we talk? 20 more questions?
I know.
I'm ready.
I know. Well, at this point, we do have to wrap it up. But before we do that, I would love to ask you two things. First one, your social media and where can people find you and connect with you?
Sure. The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. I feel this is where I'm most active, where I love interacting. I also love to get to know what people are working on, and always up for collaborations, for podcasts, for any type of stuff. So if you look me up on LinkedIn, Franziska Heuschkel, there's not too many of myself. So hopefully you'll be able to find myself, or Nadia can put me in the notes. And of course, please check out our website, spaceandpepper.com. We can also put it there, where you find a lot about our work that we talked about at the beginning, about human-centered design and the work that we do, where we always love for people to work with us in our research lab. It's called Space Lab, where we do more like innovative work. And of course, always we're happy to hear from people who are interested in making their spaces more human-centered. And there's all of the contact info. So I'm sure people will find a way to get in touch.
Oh, for sure. It's amazing. I'm going to leave all your information below this video in the comments, and also your name will appear below your picture, your photo right there. And Francie, last question. This one is a little bit of a philosophical one. So let's think that, let's go fast forward in time, long time. And you know that this is your last day on Earth. Like you're about to expire. What are 3 things that you would like to leave humanity with? Maybe 3 thoughts, 3 actions that you did, or maybe 3 things that you would like to share with them, 3 ideas about maybe believing in themselves, or maybe, whatever you want to say. There's no such thing as a wrong answer. All answers are right.
I think there's a lot of things, and to be very precise, I probably would need to think about like the perfect quotes, but let me think about 3 ideas, and even if they're not perfect, but I will try to be less perfectionist. For me personally, one would be insight without action is powerless. I feel that, and personally, you can listen to podcasts, you can read books, but you should try to find a way to apply insights and understandings and to incorporate them into your daily routine, into your decision making. And that is, in my opinion, a very difficult task, actually. You know, sometimes you read a quote or a mantra and you're like, my God, I love this. But how can you face yourself daily with it? You know, how can you challenge yourself to not take the next decision the exact same way? So knowing that or trying to work that in, I feel is a very powerful thing. The second thing for me would be just meditate. And that's also something that a lot of entrepreneurs say, and I feel I'm also overhearing it. But it's just, for me, the simple, most powerful tool to pull me out certain emotions or certain like self-sabotaging thoughts or like anxiety, and just focus on something. And also, it doesn't need to be always that you sit down and you do the you know, you can go for a walk. There's beautiful like guided meditative walks where you just kind of be aware of your surroundings. And the last one, oh man, now I will kind of want to have 10 more, but I'm gonna keep it to one last one, would be that I or people should really value and put work into their relationships. Especially, I have to say, this year, which was a challenging year for a lot of people, you know, on a lot of different levels. But I felt again the power of having the social support system and this network around one. And I also feel there's a time in everyone's lives where it's so easy. You meet so many people, you know, you're studying, maybe you start a new job, but it's not always like that. And there is really work that needs to be put in there. Like, and I mean, and it can be beautiful work. It's not like, tomorrow I have to like write 3 emails or 3 letters, but I really feel this is so valuable for my own well-being, my mental well-being, for my happiness. And yeah, I think that sums up 3 if I'm counting correctly.
That's amazing, Francie. Well, last thing, I just want to say thank you. So, danke schön, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias for your time. It's been an amazing and very, very fun conversation and interview this morning. Well, morning/afternoon, because I know it's afternoon where you are. So, thank you, really. And I look forward to us connecting more often.
Yes, and thank you also for your very beautiful questions. And I love also the work that you do. You know, I've watched some of your episodes, not all, but it's just amazing also the type of content you put out there for free. You know, like people can access it from all over the world and can really make a big impact in their life. And mindset is just so important. So I always love people who put these type of resources out, so it helps everyone. So also thanks for your work out there. And yes, I love talking to you. Please have me back anytime soon. It's so easy and smooth. And yes, maybe we have another opportunity, but until then.
Oh, for sure, Francie, for sure. Maybe 2021 to start it up right.
Exactly. Perfect.
Just around the corner. So let's do it. All right, my dear. Once again, thank you so, so much. You have a great afternoon and we'll speak soon. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, that was Chats with Nadia. We had the honor of chatting with Franziska Heuschkel this morning. And well, if you haven't done so, like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, amigos.